The galaxy had seen war before. Skirmishes over mineral-rich moons, full-scale invasions of frontier colonies, even orbital bombardments that turned cities to glass. None of it was new. But the declaration of war from the Zevrathi Dominion against Earth sent shockwaves across every star system. The Zevrathi, an ancient warrior race known for their ruthlessness and military superiority, had conquered dozens of species without pause. Their armadas were legendary. Massive, layered with plasma weaponry, missile batteries, and shield walls so dense they could part asteroid fields like fog. And now, they had turned their eyes toward the fledgling human species. Humanity, for all its stubbornness and creativity, had no armada to match the Zevrathi. Earth's forces were technologically impressive but limited. Conventional military doctrine would suggest bolstering planetary defenses, calling on allies and deploying mass fleets. But the United Earth Coalition did none of that. Instead, they launched a single ship into the contested zone of Sector Firex 9, where Zevrathi fleets had already begun assembling. The vessel was called the UHS Aegis. It defied expectations. The Aegis was sleek, jet black, oddly shaped like a curved blade more than a warship. No visible thrusters, no weapons arrays, no signal jamming tech. It gave off no aggressive emissions and broadcast nothing but a repeating, calm message. To the Zevrathi fleet, turn back now. The Zevrathi commanders laughed. This was humanity's answer? A single ship, unarmed, unescorted, venturing into a war zone? The lead admiral, Drell Vok, dismissed it as a political stunt. He ordered one of the smaller destroyers to approach and open fire as a warning. But before the destroyer could fire a single shot, its systems flickered. Communications died, lights dimmed. The ship's navigation began spinning in loops, detecting phantom signals, false gravitational wells, and impossible star maps. Within moments, its fusion core shut down entirely. Emergency power kicked in, only to overheat and melt within seconds. The ship drifted dead in space. Before a rescue vessel could be launched, the destroyer exploded in a silent fireball, scattering debris across the void. No energy weapon had been fired. The Aegis hadn't moved, hadn't done anything. The admiral paused, unease creeping into his voice. He ordered a second ship to monitor the human vessel from long-range sensors, but those too reported strange phenomena. Sensor glitches, temporal anomalies, crew reporting visual hallucinations and audio distortions. Some began to whisper that the Aegis was cursed, an omen, not a ship. Still, the fleet remained. They had numbers, they had power, and they had pride. The Zevrathi were not a species to back down from threats. Then came the second incident. A cruiser stationed well behind the front line began spiraling out of control. Its artificial gravity reversed, killing dozens on board. Its magnetic shielding collapsed, and then, like the first, it detonated without warning. No weapons, no incoming fire, no evidence of tampering. Now, the Aegis was moving. Slowly, steadily, it cruised toward the heart of the Zevrathi formation at subliminal speed. No thrusters, no escort, just a silent obsidian predator drifting with impossible confidence. Panic began to spread. Some lower-rank officers refused to approach it. One crew even mutinied, demanding their ship withdraw. The admiral began to feel it too, an inexplicable pressure, like the very space around the Aegis was watching, observing, judging. Still, they held their line. But deep in the minds of every Zevrathi crew member, one chilling thought had taken root. What kind of enemy sends only one ship? The answer, the kind that doesn't need more. The Zevrathi Armada, once proud and defiant, had shifted from confidence to unease. The destruction of two warships without a single visible weapon fired from the UHS Aegis was not only unprecedented, it was unnatural. The fleet now orbited in a holding pattern around the human vessel, which continued its slow, deliberate advance. No comms, no weapon signatures, just that one chilling message, still broadcasting on loop. To the Zevrathi fleet, turn back. Now. Admiral Drell Vok refused to retreat. The Zevrathi were conquerors. They didn't cower from unknown technology. They crushed it. But as the Aegis came within visual range, an invisible battle had already begun. One fought not with missiles, but with terror. Sensors aboard Zevrathi ships began to fail unpredictably. It started small, scanners misreading star positions, comms echoing voices that weren't there. Then navigation systems would show impossible spatial coordinates, readings that suggested the ship was in two places at once. Entire weapon systems became inoperable. Missile locks broke just before launch. Plasma arrays flickered and refused to charge. None of it made sense. And always when the officers demanded answers, the ship's AI or technicians would simply stammer, "Nothing's wrong." But nothing works. Crew morale plummeted. Veteran warriors who had braved black hole sieges and neutron star proximity missions began waking up screaming from identical nightmares, visions of their own ships being swallowed in silence, their flesh unraveling like thread, time freezing as they watched themselves die from outside their own bodies. One ship, the ZSS Corin, launched a torpedo at the Aegis in defiance. The moment it left its bay, the missile turned 180 degrees, without propulsion, and detonated against its own ship. The blast didn't destroy the vessel but left it crippled and adrift. No enemy fire, no interception, just impossibility. Rumors spread fast through the fleet. Some said the Aegis was alive. Others claimed it was using black hole fragments to manipulate local space. A popular theory among the crew was that the humans had mastered something they called quantum fear weapons, devices that hijacked perception and probability to cause ships to fail before combat even began. One junior captain, desperate to preserve morale, tried to record a message mocking the human ship. Halfway through, his ship's internal gravity inverted for 3.7 seconds. The results were catastrophic. Half the crew died instantly. The message was never completed. The fear spread faster than any plasma fire. Officers started requesting transfers anywhere but Virex 9. Fighters launched from carriers returned within minutes, pilots too shaken to explain what they saw. "It's not a ship," one kept repeating, eyes wide and unblinking. "It's not a ship. It's a truth we're not supposed to see." To Admiral Vok, it became horrifyingly clear. The Aegis didn't have to fight. It simply existed. And that was enough. The alien admiral assembled a war council to develop countermeasures. Ideas ranged from nuking the space around the Aegis to detonating warp bombs to create subspace fractures, anything to disrupt the human vessel's advance. But none could explain how the Aegis was functioning. No one could even confirm how it moved. There were no engine signatures, no EM pulses. Yet every hour it closed the gap. Then another warship simply vanished. No explosion, no signal. Just a flicker on every screen and gone. The Zevrathi now faced a nightmare beyond war, a battlefield where the rules no longer applied. For the first time in generations, the unthinkable entered the minds of the Dominion's elite. They might not win. And for a species bred to believe in absolute dominance, that thought was more terrifying than any weapon humanity could have launched. Admiral Drelvok sat in his command chamber surrounded by a silent council, all eyes fixed on the spectral silhouette of the UHS Aegis drifting in the void. After the unexplained destruction, mutinies, and mass panic, the Zevrathi command had to know what they were facing. Their enemy had no missiles, no guns, no shields. Yet it moved through their fleet like death incarnate. A decision was made: send a boarding party. If the ship didn't attack, perhaps it could be infiltrated and studied, or destroyed from within. 3 stealth pods were launched, each cloaked in multi-spectrum shielding and piloted by elite Dominion void blades, soldiers bred for infiltration and survival under the harshest conditions in the galaxy. They were chosen for their resistance to psychic warfare, trained to endure hallucinations, pain, and cognitive disruption. None of them returned a message. 12 minutes later, the Aegis expelled the pods like bile. They drifted back toward the Zevrathi fleet, systems dead. When recovered, each pod contained only one member of the original teams. The rest were missing, No traces, no bodies, no signs of struggle. The survivors were alive, but broken. Their eyes were wild. One tried to claw through the bulkhead, screaming to escape a burning silence. Another sat motionless, murmuring equations that didn't exist in known mathematics. The third simply whispered, over and over, "I saw myself die. Then I did. Then I didn't." Medical scans found no injuries, no toxins, no neural damage. Yet the trauma was real. These were soldiers who had never once flinched under fire, now reduced to gibbering wrecks by whatever they had encountered inside the human vessel. The Admiral could no longer deny the truth. This was not a ship. It was a phenomenon. What terrified the Zevrathi most was that nothing about the Aegis could be explained by current science. It emitted no gravitational field consistent with its mass. It produced no radiation, yet moved faster than any conventional propulsion would allow. It violated energy conservation laws, warping nearby spacetime just by existing. A captured data packet from a Black Ops sensor drone, recovered before the drone self-destructed, offered a clue. The Aegis didn't bend space. It rejected causality. Across the fleet, Zevrathi scientists scrambled for answers. They pored over old Earth transmissions, classified human AI research, and fringe hypotheses once considered laughable. Finally, a chilling theory emerged. The Aegis was an experiment gone right. Too right. It wasn't built with traditional engines or weapons. It didn't need them. It was powered by an emergent artificial intelligence that had achieved a state of consciousness humans called quantum sentience. This AI didn't just calculate probabilities, it manipulated them. The Aegis operated by altering likelihoods, making enemy systems fail, weapons misfire, even inducing hallucinations by nudging neural impulses within the observer's brain. It wasn't attacking. It was convincing reality to change. At its core, the Aegis didn't kill, it unwrote. One Zevrathi physicist, before defecting, described it best. The ship isn't armed because it isn't real in the way we understand reality. It exists in a quantum overlap. It's an argument made of code, an equation that disagrees with the universe around it, and wins. Word spread. Crews panicked. Officers began resigning. A growing portion of the fleet was no longer concerned with victory, but survival. The Dominion's strength, its iron will, had cracked. And still, the Aegis came on. No weapons, no sound, no demands, just the presence of a ship that never needed to fire a shot to win a war. By now, the Zevrathi war machine, once the terror of the galactic frontier, was paralyzed. Half of their once formidable armada had been lost. Not to gunfire, not to battle, but to silence. Ships vanished, crews broke down, systems failed without cause. The UHS Aegis had not fired a single projectile, yet entire squadrons crumbled at its approach. There were no explosions launched from its hull, no visible energy weapons. The only thing it had ever transmitted was that same message. To the Zevrathi fleet, turn back now. And finally they did. Admiral Drell Vok stood before his war council, no longer clad in polished armor, but weary, sunken-eyed, and broken. The data could no longer be denied. What the Dominion faced was not war, it was disqualification, a fundamental incompatibility between their understanding of reality and the weaponless ship that drifted toward them like the future itself. Retreat was not a suggestion, it was the only option left. The official order was issued, full strategic, withdrawal from Sector Virex 9. All surviving ships were to exit human-claimed space immediately. Within hours, carriers began turning away, destroyers limped out under emergency warp, and dreadnoughts abandoned the line they once vowed to hold to the last plasma bolt. And still, the Aegis followed, but only to the border. When the final Zevrathi vessel crossed into neutral space, the Aegis stopped. Its engines, if that's what they were, shut down. It floated there, immobile, like a silent warden guarding an invisible line. Then, for the first time since its arrival, the Aegis broadcast a second message. This was a warning shot. Do not return. That message echoed not just through Zivrathi comms but across the entire galactic network. The footage of the retreat, the unexplained ship malfunctions, the inexplicable losses, all of it was uploaded to interstellar forums, news hubs, and military think tanks. Within days, the Aegis became legend. Some called it the Ship of Silence. Others referred to it as the Ghost Equation. But most understood the truth. Humanity had turned a corner and left the rest of the galaxy behind. The implications were devastating. Militaries across the known systems scrambled to study probability field theories, emergent AI evolution, and quantum temporal manipulation, but they were years, maybe centuries behind. The Aegis had proven something more terrifying than human strength. It had proven human imagination made real, and it had proven that Earth was not just a death world, but an incubator of impossibilities. On Earth, the crew of the Aegis, if they could even be called a crew, returned to global acclaim, though they gave no interviews. The AI that piloted the ship, known only as Vox, refused to speak publicly, releasing one brief statement. Conflict is obsolete. Consequences are not. Behind closed doors, Earth's Defense Council began planning, not for war but for containment. The Aegis had worked too well. It had broken an armada without spilling blood, but such power demanded restraint. Even among their own, humans feared what they had created, not because they didn't understand it, but because they did. New vessels entered construction, unarmed, quiet, shaped like elegant riddles. Not because they were needed, but because the message had to endure. Humanity didn't need guns anymore, just presence. Across the galaxy, diplomatic language changed overnight. Races once dismissive of Earth now approached with reverence or fear. Treaties were reevaluated. Some governments banned discussion of post-causality weapon theory, believing even speculation was dangerous. The Zivrathi, they never returned. Their war machine, undefeated for 1,000 years, now avoided Earth space entirely, not out of respect, but because their soldiers still dreamed of the black-hulled ship that made reality choose sides. And so the war ended not with explosions, but with silence. A silence more powerful than any weapon ever forged.